Today, I want to tell you exactly what it is to show, don't tell. I want to tell you the 3 tells to cut out of your manuscript in order to let the illustrator and the illustrations do the heavy lifting, and why that's going to require some self-restraint on your part as an author. I'm also going to share with you a little bit about what you would put into an illustrator's brief. I will share with you what is an illustrator's brief. What do we put into it to effectively communicate all the shows that we're not going to tell? So let's jump right into this with a visual from yours truly. I just released a new picture book called Let's Sourdough. I'm super excited about this children's picture book where Grandma Bunny bakes sourdough bread with Tibbs. One of the things that I really worked on in the manuscript of this picture book is the show don't tell. Now, how did I do that? I did a very special edit, a passover of my manuscript before it was finalized, where I put on the lens of looking through it saying, am I telling things that I could show? Now, I happen to be my own illustrator, so I have to make myself notes, which is similar to my own little illustrator's brief. I have to make myself notes so that I remember everything that was going on in my creative brain when I was writing and editing. But really what it comes down to is that I needed to look through the manuscript saying, what am I over telling here? Now, what's an example of telling something that you should be showing or being redundant in what you tell in a picture book and what's going on in the illustrations? I want to show you this page in my recent sourdough picture book where little Tibbs is sitting on a chair and he's looking pretty sad and he's pouting. So I had some options with the way I wrote this and the way I illustrated it. And I'm going to tell you how I came to show, not tell, but what I did choose to tell. Okay, so I'm going to read this page to you for just a moment, and then I'm going to dive into like my word selection. Tibbs stared at the mixture. She's not doing anything. Good things take time, Tibbs, Grandma replies. But Tibbs doesn't like to wait. Tibbs likes to eat bread. I'll pause right there. You can tell Tibbs doesn't like to wait. He's looking sad and a little bit grouchy sitting on this chair. But I chose not to say Tibbs felt sad or this made Tibbs grouchy, because that would be telling what I could show. But I did choose to tell something creatively that is showing where I said he sits and pouts. Now, this illustration does show Tibbs sitting and pouting, but I chose to say he sits and pouts because I like the word pouts. It added a musicality, and it's a good word for kids to learn. It might even make them think the next time they're grouchy about something, if they're pouting. Are they pouting like Tibbs? I wanted to introduce that word, so I strategically used it. But Grandma said, let's keep busy. Okay, so I chose not to tell that Tibbs is sad or grouchy. The illustration shows that. But I did choose to tell something the illustration said, and that's optional. That's a personal choice. Now, you can see that it's very selective, and you're going to have to work hand in hand with your illustrator. And that means you need to have really good communication with your illustrator. And here's what I want to really bring across through this whole entire, if you take away anything from this show don't tell video, it's that the text and the art of your picture book work in concert like dance partners together. They're meant to each have a role where they don't step on each other's toes. And you want to think of it like this. The art shows the action, emotion, and setting. Your pictures do the heavy lifting. They express how the character feels, where they are, and how they're moving through that moment. The text should carry what the reader can't see or what the illustrator could never show. The plot turns, the key information, and the lyrical storytelling voice. The heart of your message comes through the words. In other words, Let your words say what the art can't, and let your art show what the words shouldn't. And in order to do that, you need great communication with your illustrator, which is why I'm going to talk about the illustrator's brief a little bit at the end of this video. Hey, I just want to take a minute in the middle of this video to ask you, have you ever really wished to be able to have a one-to-one online conversation with someone who's a step ahead in the picture book creation? I'm currently offering a one-to-one online mentoring where you can book my time for 1 hour and ask me 3 of your most pressing questions in the area of writing, illustration, design, formatting, or marketing. And you can find those available dates right on my website in the links below. If there's no dates available, it'll say so, but at the beginning of every week, I'm opening a few spots for the following week. So if you keep your eye open and snag the date that works best for you, we can book a session together to help you through your biggest obstacles and roadblocks in picture book creation. Hope to see you there. First, I want to share with you the 3 common tells that you should cut, okay? And how to identify them in your manuscript. First, I'll say that here on the channel, I have a playlist called Writing Picture Books, which is a free picture book writing class. And in that playlist, I have one specific video where I talk about editing your messy first draft and how we kind of get out our first messy draft and then we go through a refining process where we pass over the draft, almost putting on different lenses and looking at the draft a certain angle. And one of those angles would be a show don't tell pair of glasses to read your manuscript and say, are there tells that I should be cutting out? Okay, so the top 3 would, the top tell that you should cut. So there's 3 of them. And the top tell that you should cut is emotions. Okay, so telling a line such as, he felt sad would be a tell that you would cut. And what you would better do is in your illustrator's brief, say during this section of text, perhaps we have downcast eyes, slumped shoulders, or something that carries the expression of the character feeling sad. And instead, if you need to replace that text with something that expresses the sadness without telling the character is sad. Something like, let's say your little character's looking at a seed. He's feeling sad that the seed won't grow. And instead of saying he felt sad that the seed won't grow, which is telling, not showing, your character might whisper, I don't think it'll ever grow. That is hand in hand, telling, not showing. The second tell is to cut obvious actions that the illustrator can show. For example, a telling line would be, she went to the door, where a better approach would be where you would say something like, the floor creaked as she reached for the doorknob. And the illustrator would show the character moving towards the door or reaching and so forth. But you're not saying such a strong action or telling such a strong action. She went to the door. The illustrations can show that she went to the door. And for example, in this picture that's adjacent to Tibbs pouting, I wouldn't say he pointed to the rubber band on the sourdough starter. That explains itself in that picture. But instead, I say, this shows us how much she grows. So the third tell that you would cut are stage directions. Lines that say things like, he pointed, she smiled, he looked. Because you can show that, or your illustrator can show that. And a better approach would be that these small gestures are visual and they don't need to live in the manuscript itself, with the exception that there's another character that's not shown on the page and you want to clearly say what that character was doing. But it's not necessarily shown on the page. And that's why you want to think a little bit about how you want to communicate things with your illustrator. I'm going to share with you a bit about the illustrator brief in just a moment, but first I want to share on how you would do a quick page mini makeover when you're editing. Okay, so I talked about putting on those lenses and going through a passover of your editing process where you're asking yourself like what to change so that you can show, not tell. And this is how you can do it. You'll first take your manuscript and you'll highlight every tell in the story. So you've done a messy first draft, and I always say don't overthink it. Don't be thinking about the tells when you're writing that first draft. You're going to do it now when you go through again, and you're going to highlight all the tells. And then you're going to ask yourself, can this be shown in the picture? Do I specifically want my illustrator to show this? Or do I want them to show something else and I kind of need to say this? Then you're going to rewrite what's left so that your text holds the heart of the story, the musical rhythm. And in this one simple pass, you can tighten your whole manuscript, and instantly it can be more professional because you're now starting to work in harmony with your illustrator, with the pictures showing and doing the heavy lifting. So let's quickly talk about this illustrator brief. What is it, and what can you do to create a good one for your illustrator, even if you are the illustrator? First, I want to say there's some really great videos that live out on YouTube that go in depth on exactly how to create a very thorough illustrator's brief with all the content that you need. Right now, I just want to give you a quick overview of a few of the things that you'd be including and really what it is. So an illustrator brief is simply a document or notes that describe what each page should communicate visually and not just what they literally look like. I always encourage the writer and author to create what is called a writer's pagination for the illustrator, where you break the text up into the different pages. I offer a one-page pagination tool that can be used by both writers and illustrators. You can print it as many times as you want for your personal use. It's a super affordable little tool you'll find in my links with all my other downloadable printables that I offer picture book creators. And this tool for writers can be as simple as you taking the breakdown of your 32-page picture book and putting in some very simple sketches. Now, remember, you don't want to encroach on your illustrator's creative license. You just want to be able to pass your thoughts and vision to them so they can then execute a really amazing visual for your picture book. And what you could also do is use this to separate some words where often I will print off my manuscript. I'm going to disappear here and show you, but I print off my manuscripts and I divide them with lines, and then I'll take little cues from the lines and I'll sketch them in here with a little tiny thumbnail of what I'm imagining to show, not tell. And so that could be a little project that you work on to include in the illustrator's brief, although it's not necessary. The illustrator's brief is really the information that you want to pass on to your illustrator. It can be one-sentence summaries of what's happening on the page, emotions or actions that you want the illustration to capture on that page, or a few key visual notes like something that you're not able to tell in the text. For example, during this segment, the cat is hiding under the table, or during this segment, the balloon is floating away and so is crying in the background. And you can communicate all of that in the illustrator's brief. You want to keep the notes light. You don't want to dictate every detail, but give your illustrator the freedom to interpret your story and what you have in mind. And that is where that pagination process can come in really handy. If you found this video to be helpful or useful to you in your writing and or illustrating process, I would love you to show it some support by doing all the things that YouTube loves. Subscribe so you can follow along, hit the bell so you never miss a video. Give me a thumbs up to show your support and share it with a friend. Leave me a comment. I would love to hear where you're at in your picture book creation process. Remember, I offer one-to-one mentorship. Check out the links below for details and all of my downloadable printable resources that can help you in your picture book creation journey. Until next time, creators, happy writing.